afternoon, everybody. It's Debbie Evans here, and this is Rolo, the time-travelling Jack Russell. And today we're going to read you a chapter from The Secret Adventures of Rolo, Book 2, The Chilvester Passage. And this is all about Rolo appearing in ancient Egypt. The tunnel brought me out into a very hot and sandy place. As soon as I crawled out, the overwhelming heat hit me. That and the smell of camels and the sight of swaying palm trees. I could hear chip, chip, chipping just in front of me, and I spied a sculptor hard at work with a large chisel, surrounded by a team of helpers, creating a monument in limestone, and it looked to me as if it was to have the body and legs of a lion. With imagination, it could have even been a great dog. I cast my eye to the great triangular-shaped slabs behind me. They looked like huge pieces of chocolate. My curiosity got the better of me, and I trotted over the hot sand as fast as I could, for it was burning my paws, until I stood at the tiny entrance of the smallest of the pyramids. Once inside, it was cool, musty and dark, and being an experienced tunneler, I was quite used to that. I followed a succession of ladders and passageways and found myself inside the base of what appeared to be a large storage room. I looked about, acclimatising my eyes to the darkness from the contrast of the bright desert sun, and then realised oil lamps were lighting the scene before me. I knew at once what was going on because I'd seen it in the floppy-haired boys' school books. Mummification. The soon-to-be inhabitant of this huge monument was laid out on a slab, and several physicians were in the process of embalming him. I sidled round a whole palace full of furniture and precious possessions and ducked under what looked like a chariot wheel. I was startled when I heard a voice beside me. It was a cat. No ordinary moggy, but a sleek Egyptian feline, and my instincts to give chase were quashed as I remembered that I was time-travelling and had to put my natural desires to one side. "I've not seen one like you before," she purred. "Are you a descendant of Anubis?" Now, my ancient history is a little limited, but I do know that Anubis was the Egyptian god with the head of a jackal, and he always oversaw matters of the dead. By the looks of this poor chap on the slab, he was definitely dead. "Yes, he sent me in his place to learn," I murmured, adding rather feebly, "I'm new." "Well, hello, new. I'm Habiba," the cat replied, her green eyes glinting in the darkness of the tomb. I thought it too complicated to explain, so I let it go. "Why are all those worldly goods collected here?" I asked, surveying the ornate chairs, tables, gold crockery, clothes and jewellery being laid out by servants in rows with mathematical precision, filling the whole floor space. The base of the pyramid resembled some kind of grand garage sale. "To accompany the pharaoh to the afterlife, of course. Goodness knew, you're certainly wet behind the ears," Habiba explained. She stood tall with her four paws gathered in and her noble head erect. "What are you doing here then?" I asked. "I was his favourite companion. My name means loved, and I'm to accompany him onto his next journey," she said rather proudly. "What, you mean stay here forever in this tomb?" I asked, astonished. "We will go to the afterlife together," she replied quietly. "He wouldn't leave me behind. I am his cat for life." I saw 4 big stone jars neatly lined up under the slab, and I asked Habiba what they were for, and then I wished I hadn't. She told me each canopic jar contained the stomach, liver, lungs and intestines of the pharaoh, and each organ was stored separately, with a different god looking after it. Enjoying my discomfort, she added that the pharaoh's brains had been poked around with a hook up his nose, and then his body turned onto its side so the mushed brains could be poured into a bowl for separate storage. Ew, way too much information, I thought. Habiba assured me that the heart was still inside the pharaoh's body, as he would need that for his journey. Thank goodness I hadn't arrived 40 days earlier, or I might have witnessed this gruesome first stage of the mummification process. I didn't even have to see the gaping cavities where the organs had been removed from, as these wounds had already been stuffed with resin-soaked strips of linen. Thank goodness for that. Habiba explained that the body had lain these past weeks covered in salt, and this was now the washing off stage, and then oil, and finally resin would be added to preserve the body. She told me with great delight that the corpse at this stage in the mummification process was darker and thinner than it had been at the time of death. Luckily, I only got to see the good bit, the wrapping with linen strips, and I watched as amulets, kinds of charms, were hidden in the bandages to ensure good luck and protection in the afterlife. Another man of some importance entered the room, the royal makeup artist with his pots and paints, who then provided a splendid wig which he carefully arranged around the royal head. The mummy was then lifted by 4 solemn servants of a higher order than the furniture stackers and laid in an ornate inner casket ready for the fitting of the elaborate funerary mask. I knew all about that already because I'd seen a photograph of the blue and gold mask of Tutankhamun, now in the Cairo Museum. The postcard was on the Smiley Lady's fridge in the kitchen. I wondered what all this high ceremony was for and asked my learned cat friend, I use the term loosely. Habiba explained in hushed tones that the body and soul had to be separated and that the soul would then journey to the underworld where Osiris would judge it. If the pharaoh was deemed to have been a good person in his earthly life, then his soul and body would be reunited in the afterlife to live on through eternity. It was important for the soul to recognise the body when they met up again, and so the embalmer's job was to make the body in death look much as it had in life. That job required a great deal of skill indeed. The outer casket was richly decorated with pure gold leaf, and I noticed it was covered with hieroglyphics, explaining to whom the body belonged in symbols and pictures. The lid was finally closed. The white-robed men withdrew, and I saw a shadow lengthening as the stone door of the tomb was about to be sealed up from the outside world forever. Are you sure you're staying here? I asked Habiba. Perfectly sure, she replied, settling into her statuesque pose and closing her green eyes. Right then, I'll be off. Very nice to have made your acquaintance, I said with as much dignity as I could muster. It was all I could do not to break into a run in my effort to cross the floor as quickly as possible, such as my fear of being locked in. I remembered the trauma of being locked in a cage during my last spell in the dog's home. That's why I have a black smudge above my nose where I chewed the wire trying to escape. I made it to the door with a few inches of daylight remaining and poked my nose around it. A sandalled foot pushed me back in with some force. The pharaoh's animals stay with him, all of them, I heard a gruff voice say, and then all was muffled by the rolling of the stone and the sealing of the tomb. I tried to protest, scrabbling at the closed-up entrance, and the serene cat was by my side again. It's no good. Look, my family will have to stay here too, although I wish it could be otherwise for them. It is my destiny, not theirs. I looked to where she was pointing and saw several kittens huddled together in the dwindling lamplight. There must be another way out, I exclaimed. I was sure Athelstan hadn't sent me all the way to Egypt to spend my last few days entombed with a bunch of cats. Inspecting the walls for another means of exit, I saw a statue of Anubis, posed sphinx-like on a plinth. I pretended to the young cats that it was me. You don't look much like Anubis, your nose isn't long enough, said one of the kittens called Masood. His mother reprimanded him for being cheeky. On closer scrutiny, I saw a tiny trapdoor in the plinth underneath the foot of the long-nosed black dog statue, large enough for me at any rate. Anyone want to come with me? I asked casually, sensing an escape route and not wanting to hang around much longer. Masood scampered away from his brothers and sisters, and with a look back at his mother said, "I do." The others swiftly followed like sheep. Without waiting for anyone to try to stop us, I pushed the trapdoor open just enough to exit through and held it open. Masood squeezed through first, followed by Mandisa, Manu, Mensah and Mert. All looked pretty much the same to me, small grey cats with sleek fur and all with their mother's glittering green eyes. "Live up to your name," the mother cat called after her eldest and cheekiest son as the last tail retreated, and "Look after him, Akins," she addressed to me. It seemed she'd given me a new name. It was better than new. When we emerged in the full hot sun of the Egyptian desert, I asked him what the name Masood meant. "Lucky," he said, "and Manu, born second, and Mensah, born third, and my sister Mandisa means sweet." "What about Mert?" I said, looking at the quietest and smallest kitten. "Oh, I forgot him. The silent one," replied Masood. "You're not from round here, are you? Oh, and if you're wondering," he added, "Mother called you Akins, which means brave boy." Wow, I'd never been called that before. It had a certain ring to it. I liked it. Night was falling fast, and at last the sand was cooling down, as was the air temperature. Better to travel in the total darkness, I thought. Less chance of detection by the guards, who seemed determined to see all animals entombed. We were a strange party, and dogs and kittens stopped in the shadow of the giant half-finished sculpture to rest, waiting for the cover of night to creep over the desert. The sculptor and his team of helpers had already gone home. "What do you think it's going to be?" I asked Masood, nodding in the direction of the statue. He had no idea, but then I saw a mischievous glint in his eye, and he climbed up on the plinth and used the scaffolding to pull himself up the height of the half-finished beast to the spot where the face should be. It was still a sheer block of smooth limestone. He called his brothers and sisters to join him. Sensing adventure and fun, they didn't need asking twice. "Stay where you are, Akins," he called, and he set to work at once with his paws. 4 pairs of glittering green eyes watched in amazement, and then more paws and claws joined in. I must confess I dozed off and awoke stiffly in the dawn, stretching forwards and backwards, doing my usual yoga routine. It took me a little while to realise where I was. "Now do you recognise it, Akins?" shouted Masood from the top of the scaffolding, and I'm just going to show you the picture before I finish today's chapter. There you can see the sphinx looking suspiciously like Rolo, who's now gone onto the carpet to listen to the end of the chapter. Rubbing my eyes with my front paws in the rosy-coloured sunlight of dawn, I glanced up at the sculpture and burst out laughing. Masood and his siblings had copied the exact features of my head onto the lion's body. It was a very good likeness indeed, and I felt immensely proud to be part of Egypt's rich ancient history. A worthy monument to me at last. "We'd better get going," I said, after I'd admired their handiwork from all angles. I didn't want to tear myself away and wished I had something to capture the image to show Athelstan and the woodland folk, but I was conscious of the time. I would love to have seen the sculptor's face when he realised someone had finished his monument for him. Wonder if he'd have to change it back to whatever it was supposed to be. I found the time tunnel entrance easily enough, but the kittens couldn't cross the threshold. "Can't we bring them to Athelstan?" I asked Julia when she appeared with her lantern, already suspecting what the answer might be. "No, I'm afraid these kittens won't be able to time travel. You will have to leave them here in their own time," Julia replied, confirming my fear. I turned to Masood and told him with sadness they would have to stay here in ancient Egypt. "Don't worry, Akins. You've rescued my family, and thanks to you and your discovery of the trapdoor, I can go back in there and persuade Mother to come out, and we can all find new owners. Don't worry about us. It's been nice knowing you. Salam alaikum." He waved goodbye, adding, "We'll remember you because we will always see your face in the desert," as he pointed a proud paw towards his artwork. Such an artistic talent was wasted on small cats. Impressive though, handsome chap, the model, and rather a good likeness, I thought, though I say so to myself. So that's the end of today's chapter. Thank you very much for listening, and Rolo and I will be back tomorrow afternoon at the slightly later time of 3:30, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Goodbye.